Again, everybody. Again, this is John Stacy getting you started here. Welcome to our town hall meeting for GAMA members. And so my hope today is to focus most on you guys asking questions and helping you further. I have a couple of things that I want to share up front, but I want this opportunity for members to come together to kind of talk about what they're experiencing and any solutions and best practices they have for what they're experiencing. So I'm going to share my screen here again with just a couple quick things that with what GAMA's been working on and with some updates. So please let me know when you can see my screen there. It should say Tariff Briefing 424. I don't have any fancy slides. I'm not going to spend an hour talking. I'm going to go through a couple things and open up for questions, if that's okay, everybody. Just a reminder, this is being recorded. It will be on our GAMA YouTube channel, and then eventually it'll be on our GAMA Resource Hub, where we archive all of our videos. This is an open forum for members to chat, talk with each other. I've got basically three main topics that I kind of want to cover. And again, I appreciate if you mute yourself, just because there's a lot of background noise at these kind of calls. We have over 100 people registered for this Zoom meeting. And so first, I want to just share some resources that members have been sharing in the I remember Facebook group and in other areas over the last week or so. Just a couple of them. One, there's this actually came out in the last. It was posted in the webinar we had a few minutes ago. It is a trade compliance resource hub, which is a tariff tracker. And I found this very interesting. I just mentioned it and I looked at it and I thought this is kind of cool. We should share this. But Reed Smith is an international consulting firm. And this is a hub they put together. And I'm going to share this document in the chat here when I'm done talking. If I have the links that way. So this is how they're just keeping track of what the various tariffs and what the changes are, what the countries are. There's next just very good information on here. Also, during the previous call, there was a question about customs brokers. So I went and I found the border protection, customs and border protection website. And they had two links I thought were interesting. One was on customs and brokers list there, but they also had one on duty rates too, to get an idea of what the current rates are by country. And so I would recommend bookmarking both of these websites to be a resource for yourself, because it's important to educate yourself on what's happening. We're going to try to help with that too, but just good on that. And then just moving on, as you might be aware, we're doing a current industry survey, because one of our strategies is to lobby the administration for some exemptions for toys and games. As you might be aware, there's a coalition of about 20 countries that are working on zero tariffs for toys. The U.S. Toy Association is the main lead in this country, but Astra, ourselves, and a few other groups are also partnering with that effort. And so we've been talking with public policymakers, doing some lobbying. I was in D.C. A month ago today, meeting with on the Hill, meeting with legislative staffers and the Ways and Means Committee about tariffs. And we were talking about some of the ways we can look what happened the last time Trump was in administration. He had 301 exemptions for some industries. Now, I will be honest with you that the success rate of this last year was like 14% of requests got approved because there's so many requests. But after talking with some of our partners in DC, the one thing that would help us the most is having industry data about the effects that tariffs are having, explaining why the materials can't be produced in this country, that there is not an infrastructure for manufacturers. We know all this, but they don't know our industry. And so it behooves us to work on educating the media as well as members of Congress and their staff about why it's important that our industry provides valuable services to our consumers. It's tens of thousands of American jobs that are at risk because of these tariffs, and that why it's important to do exemptions for our industry. And so we're going to try. We're going to go there and we're going to ask for it. We do our best to get approved, but we know there's hoops we have to go through. And the first one is collecting information. And so we put a survey out earlier this week asking some critical information. And here's some preliminary responses. We've had over 100 responses so far. And if you've not done the survey yet, there's a link at the bottom of this document. Again, will be in the chat soon. Please share it with people, your friends and your partners in the industry, so we get a widespread data. But looking at some of the results here, 90% of our members have cited the increased cost to operate their businesses, and that's not a surprise to anybody, I'm sure. None of these numbers are. 85% have report delayed or cancellation products or availability of products. Almost 71% of decreasing prices on their products. 67% experiencing supply chain disruptions. I'm kind of surprised that's not higher, to be honest with you. 51% have frozen the hiring of new employees. 34% of it either laid off or reduced hours for their employees. And some definitely noted that if this isn't resolved soon, that number's going to go up much higher. And 3% reported closings of stores or delaying expansion of their current facilities. And that's overall. And then there's some numbers here from publishers, retailers, and production as well you can look at. Again, these numbers are surprising. It's having a lot of problems downstream with the industry seizing up on supply chains, new products not coming to market. Real concerns about what's going to happen in the fourth quarter for this year. And so again, we're doing our best to collect the data from the industry and to share with policymakers and with the media to get our story out. Here's the link. Again, it's been in the newsletter this week on our social media platforms. And again, I'll have this in the chat when I'm finished talking here. I'll make copies and put this in there.
Yeah, it's industry, so I'm listening to what they're talking about.
And Eric, if you could please mute yourself as we're going through, that'd be appreciated. And then finally, I talk about lawsuits. As you know, there's been a lot of publicity around some lawsuits that have come out in the last week. One with Jimmy Stegmaier with Pacific Legal. There's also another one with the new I apologize. The new Civil Liberties Alliance. It's hard to be dyslexic and try to read these things on the fly, and I apologize for that. But those are the two suits that are directly being involved, members of our industry that are involved in these lawsuits. And there's a bunch of others that are happening as well. I saw in the New York Times that 12 states have sued the Trump administration over his overreach about using the emergency powers. There's two news articles on the links about that if you want to read. GAMA has reached out to both law firms about being a co-plaintiff in these cases, and I spoke to one of the lead attorneys yesterday from Pacific Legal, and we're going to be sharing the results from our survey with them, so they have some additional data for their suit. And we're wishing them best of luck, and we're going to support them wherever we can to hopefully make that work. Be honest with you, the lawsuits is probably the quickest way to resolve this. But the question is the administration going to recognize the courts if they do overturn them on that? And we don't have an answer to that because this administration is unpredictable. And so we're going to support the lawsuits, and we're going to move forward with that, as well as moving forward with our outreach to media, as well as to elected officials, and keep moving forward with that. That's a lot of quick data dump. I know that. So again, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and open up for questions. And I know people on here hopefully have a lot of questions to chat with us here, and we'll try to answer them as we can. And so if you can either raise your hand or you can come off of unmute and ask your question, that'd be great. I'll try to feed them as best I can, and then hopefully somebody in the audience here might have some answers too, and I'll keep an eye on the chat here too, see for questions too as we're looking through. All right. All right, I'm going to post these links in the chat, like I said. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you. All right. I don't know if there's a comment you make, Scott, in the chat, if you want to talk about that. You talk about the difference between delays and outright cancellation. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but you are absolutely correct on that.
No,
we've had 130 responses.
I was curious when you post the final numbers, if you could have, I understand you need to, for sake of those meetings, combine the numbers and make them look as impressive as possible or unimpressive as possible, whichever definition you want to put at it. But just for us as members to know what that is would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will definitely do the crosstabs. And so it's based on, because it's broken down, you can look at by membership type as well as the response. I can do that as well for that. So I'm happy to make that available. And my goal is to have that out on Tuesday of next week, once the survey closes Monday night. We can go to that. Right. All right. So please go ahead. Good question there. All right. So I look at the chat. There's a couple questions in here. I think there's a question about what the legal underpinnings of the arguments for the Pacific Legal one. Basically, talking about that a couple theories. One of them is that the emergency powers that Trump is citing for national emergency are not applicable because there was a national emergency, so he created one with the economy. And so they're talking about legislative overreach, but also the law that was written did not talk about tariffs. Specifically, it talked about taxes. And the question is he using it? And the answer is yes, bending what the current law says for the situation. So it's trying to rein him in under that. Those are the two underlying pinnings of that suit. And then yes, there are you could search for it online. I will find the links for that too and put that in here for you if you want to see the actual suits for that. This question is, what is GAMA doing to help look for alternative manufacturers, either in other countries or in the US? Perhaps working with some printing companies in the US that might be willing to expand operations if enough GAMA reps will commit to moving production in the US. I'll be honest, we've not looked at that option yet. We've been focusing on trying to stop the tariffs. We've been not looking at ways to, I guess, mitigate, to try to find other initiatives, but I'll make a note of that because I think that's a good suggestion. I'll add that to our list here. Excellent. How is GAMA doing overall? Are you impacted? I imagine some members may be on the expense of being a member. Yeah, that's true. I mean, obviously, we work for the members, and if the industry's hurting, we're hurting. I'm happy to say that we've obviously we saw some impact in our attendance at GAMA Expo this year because of our international members wouldn't feel comfortable coming to the United States because of the current administration. We're seeing a little bit of that during Origins, but we have people saying that they're not joining GAMA because they understand the importance of sticking together on this issue. And so we're very excited to have them doing that. Next question is, have we engaging in any lobbying activities? The answer is yes. I mentioned that I was in DC the last week of March. Did about a dozen visits to legislators on the Hill in those 2 days that I was there, 3 days I was there. I also went to the U.S. Trade Representative had a hearing on some shipping container fees, which just came out last week for about some new fees that the administration is adding on that to fight China's dominance of making containers. We're part of a coalition of 317 trade associations, which have been advocating against that. We signed a letter on March 24th opposing that. And we're currently working on doing feedback for the public comments period that's going on right now. So I think May 2nd, there'll be information going out in the newsletter either Friday or Monday about that, how members can also voice their concerns about that. We've also been talking with a lobbying firm in DC about working with them, doing some grassroots outreach to members, connecting them with the legislators in their districts. They're currently looking at a crosstab of our members and where the key legislators are based to find out what kind of overlap there is. And so we can reach out to those members to see if they can get engaged to do letter writing campaigns, talk to local media, give them some talking points. So yes, we're definitely, this is the primary work that I'm working on right now. My staff is doing everything else, and I'm focusing mostly on my time on advocacy at the moment. Just so you don't know, I have a background in government relations and advocacy. I spent 17 years working in state government here in Ohio as a legislative aide in the Ohio House of Representatives, and then I did lobbying for the home care and hospice industry for 4 years, then a year of education lobbying. So this is definitely in my wheelhouse. And actually, it was interesting. I went to when I was in DC, one of the current representative when the Ways and Means Committee actually was a former coal lobbyist here in Ohio, and so he and I were having a very good chat about our history together. And I brought, hey, by the way, what about tariffs? And he's like, yeah, I'm not in favor of it. I'm like, great. And we had a good conversation about that. So yes, definitely, we're definitely doing some lobbying activities and working to get our members engaged in that too. Is there a question there? Right. All right. So it looks like people have been posting in the links for the Stonemeyer case. I appreciate that with Pacific Legal. That's great. Also, contact with Ashley. She's great to work with. I had a good conversation with her yesterday. There's a question about the toy industry lobbying. I've talked to Greg Ahern, who's the CEO at the Toy Association. We met twice in the last week. I've been going to the weekly briefings they're doing with their members. And he is aware that we are very concerned about this and that games are part of toys as a larger market, and we should be included any exemptions or any kind of zero tariffs that they're working on. And he agreed with us on that. I guess it does help that Hasbro is a member of their association as well. So that's good, I guess. And so, yeah, definitely, we're definitely making sure that they're aware of what our needs are. And in fact, we're talking to them about doing a joint legislative fly-in in early June in DC to kind of talk about these issues from legislators as well. So we may be coming back to members to ask them to be part of that as well. So once I have more details, I'll make sure I share that with you as well. Let's see. Yes. So it's about Dropbox location. We actually have a new website that will launch on Monday. It is the tabletopadvocacy.org, and there'll be resources on there along with sample letters for your legislators. Here's how to contact them. Here's some key people. I saw a brief draft that this morning. We're doing some tweaks on it, so it'll be up on Monday. And so that'll be in the newsletter that goes out on Monday as well. And so definitely there's location for that, and we'll have that out to you shortly. Let's see. Please be aware of the cost of lawsuits. Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think, Tricia, that's a good point. You don't know what's going to happen with this Trump presidency, how he's going to react to. I mean, he's basically saying that the lawsuits have no merit, which we'll see how that goes too, for sure. But again, as I think as AJ pointed out, the lawsuits that have been happening are either coming from public interest law firms who are funded. Interesting enough, they're funded by people on the very far right libertarians who are funding these because they have a real issue with the overreach of the administration, of any administration, including this one. And so they're not costing people who are the plaintiffs in that because they're being funded by large donors, which is helpful in this case. Yes, we're talking about, Mike asked about the exemption. I'm definitely making sure that gaming accessories is part of that conversation. Card sleeves, deck boxes, all those. I mean, because it's tabletop accessories is kind of how we're pitching it. Because to us, it's all one thing. It's not just board games. It's everything that our members touch on. Let's see. All right. All right. Okay, there's mobile Scott Morse's on here. Okay, it's cool. Yeah, I share my link, and so the mobile John Stacy show up as well, so I understand that. All right. Let's see what else we've got here. All right, and then Roddick, who's on our board, mentioned about the membership directory. There's a list of production members on there, which is good. Obviously, there are a number of current members who are in U.S. based, but I think the point Trish is making about reaching out to other companies who may not be making our product products is looking for business. So I think that's helpful as well. I'm caught up on the chat here, so if anybody has a question they want to just ask, that's cool too, because I mean, this is a town hall conversation. Unlike elected officials, I'm not afraid to talk to our members, and it's important people. When I was running the state legislature, we did this public hearing once, and I was the guy with the timer, and I got this nasty comment that I was mean to people because I cut them off. I'm like, we had to get two people. That's how it went, and so I'm usually a nice guy, but sometimes you got to keep on track. So. It was about public library funding is what it was. People were very passionate about that. And my boss was the education chairman. And we drove up around the state. We did like 6 public hearings. And people came out great, but they got loud and mad. And unfortunately, we were under time. So, all right, let's see here. So key messages GAMA would suggest. The big things that I've been talking to them about is that we're talking here about saving current jobs that exist. And part of the structure we've had over the last 3 decades is that we have the intellectual property in the state, people who are doing all the creative work here, whether it's game design, doing the sales of it, the fulfillment, all that happens in the US. To make that happen is we had to make price at an affordable rate for people. I mean, that means we have to do it overseas for the most part. There is some domestic manufacturing, but they don't have the capacity that we need for our industry. We're a $20 billion global dollar industry with 10 million of that in the United States. We're one of the largest markets in the world doing this, and we don't want to risk those jobs, but the problems of possible jobs 3 to 5 years from now. And that's the things that I'm talking. That's been resonating with people, especially when I point out it's in their district that you've got so many jobs. And so one of the things we've been asking members is to update their profile in YM, so you know how many employees you have, how many people, so you can get a better understanding of what the impact of those jobs going away. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm sorry. The last question, which is great. Awesome. We county politicians, yeah, did that one. And so curious, those of you who are talking to the media and talking to your elected officials, if you have been, what have you been telling them? What kind of messaging have you been having, conversation you've been having with them? If you'd like to share that, that'd be appreciated. And there was a comment about doing a targeted session with our tariffs industry. Yeah. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I thought that's what we're doing at that meeting. And I appreciate Steve had the time to do that with us, but it was more of a general, broad conversation. Kind of got away from us there. So I'll talk to David about see if we could find another opportunity to do a little more targeted conversation as well. They can do that as well too. So a question about what happens when tariffs are overturned. My guess is that people are not going to be able to get refunds. The real question that I have is that what happens when all this market bumps back up with shipping containers and all those logistics of getting the supply chain back in order? Because we're competing with obviously hundreds of industries, thousands of industries trying to all at the same time get back in the market. So it's going to be really challenging for a lot of people. And I know that I've seen that conversation about that on our social media group. Have you guys started thinking about how you want to approach that or what your plans are for that?
John, I'll jump in on 2 things real quick. This is the real Scott Morris, not any of the doppelgangers or anything like
I
that.
went on TV, got it.
Yeah. We we've asked our customs broker about potentially reserving containers that we know we will need for the rest of the year and locking in a rate ahead of time. Transparently, that's not been an easy conversation or a simple and straightforward one, but it's a good one to ask. I was going to ask you, and I understand if you can't comment about this or prefer not to comment about that. Either one is fine, and I won't take it as a negative. Um, can you talk about if this has impacted Origins at all in terms of potential publishers or exhibitors backing out or concerned about having product for the show based on timing and availability and things like that? Because I have a lot of concerns on that and Gen Con for the remainder of the year.
Yeah, we've had some conversations with them. Most people we've had a couple, I think maybe 2 or 3 that actually have canceled, but most of them have been international members who aren't comfortable traveling to the US, like from the UK and Canada. But we haven't had a mass scale of cancellations. I think last count, we have 410 exhibitors, up from 350 from last year. So definitely there's interesting growth for that for our show.
Great.
We have had a number of cancellations of Canadians for badges. I was talking to Greg about that yesterday. It's not a zero amount. It's a couple dozen have canceled. And so obviously the concern is we get closer, people are going to start feeling the pinch in their wallets from all the other tariffs, impact on everyday things they're buying because everything is going to go up as a result. Does that kind of reduce their spending power at shows by coming in general or buying once they get there? And so we definitely have a concern about that. And so we're trying to figure out how we can talk to members to figure out how we can help them if any way. Because we are a member show. I know it's Gen Con, Origins, PAX, and we're all doing these shows, but we are a nonprofit, unlike the other two, and our goal is to support our members. And so if there's a way we can do that to help the exhibitors out a bit, I'm open to doing that because at the end of the day, we work for them who are our members. And again, if you have ideas about that, I'd love to chat with you offline about that because I want everybody to have a successful show if possible.
Great, thanks.
Just one thought on that, and again, I know this primarily because I'm a dual citizen, and most Canadians would know this. But for those Canadian citizens who are thinking of coming but are afraid of the U.S. border, and there's plenty of them, by the way, it's not all just boycotts. Some of them are just genuinely afraid of, hey, this. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Andy, please go ahead.
Oh, there have been a few stories about Canadians being detained. Most people who, like myself, if you're flying out of any of the major Canadian airports, you pre-clear customs in Canada, not in the US. And that is actually a critical safety issue, one that even people coming in from Europe could choose to use. Because the worst that can happen, and I'm 99% sure this is correct, US customs inspectors in Canada can search your bags. They can ask you all the questions they want, but what they cannot do is arrest you without permission from the Canadian government on the spot, which they will not grant because you will not have committed any crime in Canada. Being inadmissible is not a crime. So as a practical matter, the worst that can happen is you're turned back to Canada. If you drive across, that's different because you're clearing customs on US soil where they have full arrest powers.
That's correct. Actually, my brother, his partner in Canada was coming down, and he got stopped because he was coming to the U.S. too often. Is what they told him, and he actually got handcuffed and put into a detained room for an hour. And they tried to question about, what are you doing here? You here for work? He's like, I'm here with my partner. And it was very frustrating, very, very disturbing to hear that. They sent him back, and he had to apply for a different kind of visa to come in. And it's been a month now, and he still hasn't been able to get approved to get back in the country. So it is real. It's happening every day.
Yeah, I was going to suggest also anyone who is potentially inviting booth staff from outside the United States, definitely make sure to have documentation correct for them in terms of working here, because if they come across a border saying they're working here, I've definitely seen several things. And I have a friend that comes from Canada to New York to work, and he's been asked multiple times about, do you have your work visa? Do you have your paperwork, all that and everything? So, make sure that we're protecting the people that we're asking to come and be part of the booth as well.
It's a good point.
I would add to that I've heard instances of people who are flying in, not just driving in from other countries. There were a couple of Germans who went to Hawaii that made the news recently, where all it was that they didn't have hotels planned for the entire stay of the trip. They were staying for 5 weeks and wanted to play it by ear, and they got strip searched and arrested and sent back. So I don't know that you can guarantee that just, flying in is going to be the solution. And I've heard of others who, had their phones checked for anti-administration messages.
Oh my God. Tremendously good points. Because I just went to Europe, and when I landed in Europe, they told me I needed to prove that I was leaving and coming back to America like on the spot, or they were not going to let me in. So
Julie, I just want to add one thing. The people who are coming in from Europe, with few exceptions, such as Dublin, are actually are not pre-clearing. They're actually only clearing on US soil. And yes, I know the story. I read the story about those Germans, and they would have touched down in Hawaii, where the customs inspectors do have arrest powers. But physically in Canada, they have to follow Canadian law. I'm assuming, but I can't say for sure, that probably in Ireland, they probably have to follow Irish law, and the worst that can happen is they will be turned around. But the other thing I wanted to add to Scott's point, and this is not, hey, I'm no fan of Trump, but this is not about the current situation. It's always been true going into either Canada or the US, that if you cross the border and what are you doing in Canada/US? What are you doing? Why are you coming into our country? Oh, I'm helping my friend out I'm helping my cousin out with such and such. If it is something that is normally done by people who are paid money, you can be turned away. And this is not recent. This was the case 40 years ago also. And I know a simple example is my college roommate's father owned a ranch in Canada, and he used to go up sometimes there for summers, living there and all that stuff. And so he invited some of his friends to come up. And when they told the Canadian customs inspector, "Oh, we're going to help out my roommate's dad on the ranch," they said, "You can't do that. You need a work permit for that." So this has always been true. If you come in from Canada and you say, "Oh, I'm going to go help out at GAMA or Toy Fair or anything like that," you are very likely to be turned away, because that is a paid job, even if you are not accepting money for it.
Andy, I'm getting curious, Scott. This question was asked in the chat about what kind of proof did they ask you to provide?
They asked me to pull up my purchase for the return ticket. So I just used the Delta app and showed them what the return ticket was, and they were okay with it. So it wasn't an issue. It was just needing to have documentation.
Right. Agreed. Excellent. And then I see Tiffany mentioned about routing through Dublin, because it's one of the US pre-checks outside US soil. And I would recommend that. I've done that a number of times. The airline is flying there, and it is nice and smooth and easy. It was nice on the US side, just not to worry about it when I got here. And then there was a question from Mike Pascal regarding training about how to talk to elected officials. I'm actually working on a video. I hope to have that up here probably by the end of this week. How to approach, how to talk, some talking points, that sort of thing, to help people feel more comfortable with it. The one thing I learned working in legislature is that, I'll say this, most elected officials are like normal people. They want to be helpful. They want to get reelected. They want to help their constituents. There are some that are not like that. When I was in DC, we were talking to this one aide for a representative, and he got really indignant with us because he didn't like our position on some things. And I'm like, we're not here to argue with you. We're here to share our position with you. And if you don't want to hear it, that's fine, but you have an obligation to share this with your boss. And he's like, "Yeah, I guess you're right." And then he kind of backed down, but got very persnickety with us, and which is fine. That's his right to do that. But we weren't being argumentative with him. And one of the guys in our group got very argument back. I'm like, "No, you don't need to do that. Just relax, and we'll follow up with a call or a letter to the representative and move on." And we did. But it's important to know that most of them want to work with you. They want to help you if they can. And I'll say that listening is probably the best you can get out of most of them. A lot of them aren't going to take action unless it affects people in their district. And so if you could tie that in with jobs or families who live in those districts, you can get a much better and warmer reception from them. So I will make sure that'll be in the out to the members. I'll make sure I send it to you specifically, Mike, so you'll have that. when we're done here. So cool. Let's see. Any other questions I'm seeing here in the chat? All right, talk about the Tricia Miller has a question here regarding if anyone's aware if wholesalers are considering adjusting multiplier expectations with a corresponding MSRP increase. I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts or ideas on that. Just be mindful that we are, as GAMA, we are under the federal antitrust laws, and we can't be like colluding to set prices and all that kind of stuff. But we can tell what people's experiences are, but we're not recommending a particular type of action. So since we're being courted, make sure I'm saying that up front. But if anyone wants to comment on that, I'd appreciate that.
I'm just not sure that it's possible to maintain that through the chain in any case. I mean, I'm not a retailer, but I know a retailer has a certain budget to purchase product. And if my product, if I said, oh, I'm only passing on the tariff, that retailer, if they were making 50% roughly in order to keep the lights on before, they don't really have necessarily the ability to just say, oh, I'll just pass on the tariff. They're going to pay the same percentage on the credit card that they take. They're going to take the same amount of risk, and I would take the same amount of risk on not getting paid. It doesn't really matter what the cost is made up of. You can't just say, oh, this is just a separate cost. I just don't think the math works for doing that. I don't think it's a situation of being, patriotic, run patriotic, or mean or not. I just think that if your whole business model is set up that I need to make X percent to make a profit and keep the lights on, you can't start saying I'm going to pay extra and just get it back with zero profit. I just don't think the math will work.
A fair point. Anyone else would like to add on this subject?
I think the other thing is that without it being a unilateral percentage across every publisher and creator, that it makes it really difficult to apply a specific price, especially with the numbers changing, I mean, sometimes by the hour. I know that we at Southern are just kind of handling it as a case-by-case basis, and just doing what we can to be as communicative as possible as to what we are having to pay and making sure that retailers are aware before the item is shipped to you and your invoice for something that may be much higher than you were anticipating on purchasing it at. And with that, there are some things that, we're just not going to be able to take on the responsibility for. And some items and orders, we may just have to say, we're going to have to wait until this comes down before we can actually accept it. So the one thing we're also hoping for is for a lot of our vendor partners to kind of be openly communicative with us well in advance of the items receiving, being shipped to the shore as well. Just so we can also make an informed decision on whether or not it's something that we can take the risk on. While everything is still very much in flux.
Absolutely, and I liked CJ's suggestion in the chat about creating a standardized tariff affected item sticker or label. That's what I see. Maybe GAMA can help create that and put something out to the members to make that easier for you. I know one comment we received in the previous conversation with members is that while obviously this is stopping the supply chain for new products, there's still a lot of currently existing product in people's stock and warehouses and all those things. And so there's a way that GAMA can promote those tariff-free products, if you will. As you might recall, GAMA does annually a winter wish list for the holiday products, but we don't know that's going to happen, right? And so totally we're talking about creating a tariff-free publication that we can share with retailers and the public about games that are out there. And so that's something we're talking internally about putting out to members, see that's something they're interested in. But if it is, that's something we definitely can coordinate on our end to help get some I guess some of those prices that have been out there that may get overlooked the first time because of all the mad rush, all the prices that were hot. There are really good games out there that missed their window or whatever. Maybe we can help promote some of those too. So to help hold some shelves for this fall if possible. But it's cool to think about an idea like that. Okay. Let's see. We also got here some other suggestions to hear about creating a harmonized tariff code. Absolutely. That's actually on the work plan that we have here. I mentioned the resource coming out on Monday. We actually have that. We have a fact sheet we put in there with a lot of those things explaining We're talking to the Game Designers Association about doing a joint, like we're explaining the various codes as well as how it's affecting the industry. And then we're doing one that's geared towards media and elected officials. But I agree, having a clear chart there has been very helpful for that too. So that's definitely on our work plan. I'm not sure, Catherine, what sorry, that's just a note taker. I can't show what that meant. So sorry. It's a different thing about people taking notes here. I had a comment about make sure to put in the correct code so we have a weighted more on top. Correct. I guess it's important to have that right communication with your production facility, that they're doing the right codes when they send them to you. Steel board games. That's Mike. Thank you very much for that comment. Cool. Who else do we have? And we've been at about 30 minutes now. I'm happy to stay as long as you want. If you have any questions or more, we can talk about. Data on how consumer retail demand for games is affected outside the United States. In the survey, we did ask if people were U.S. or they were international, and so because we do have a number of obviously retailers outside the country, but I'm not sure about. We've not looked at consumer demand yet on that. To be honest with you. Supply chain and fulfillment providers to your data. Yes, those were sent to. There were current members of the association. We sent them to them. If you have people who members or your kinds of, please feel free to share the survey. It is an open link. You do not have to be a GAMA member. It's anonymous. To put data in there. Is it shoots and isn't a game like shoots and ladders, shoots and semiconductors? That makes sense there. Cool. Let's see what else we got there. Cool. All right. Cool. I don't want to hold people up if you have any more questions, but I'd like to do this probably on a weekly basis. I don't know if this 4:30 is a good time, but we picked it because it was right after the webinar. Is there a better time to do this weekly works with people that we can set up a schedule? Since we have over 70 people on the call right now, I'd be curious if people think about when's a good time to do this on a weekly basis. You are a focus group. Want to put something in the chat? That'd be great. All right, so this time is still good for cool.
I think as long as these are recorded, John, that's the most important thing for people because it's nearly impossible to get everybody together, of course.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, and that's kind of about people from Europe. Definitely, where I would like to be a little earlier as well, to be honest with you. But we'll see. All right, cool, excellent. All right, well, most people say, like you said, either with Scott on recording or this time is fine, so that's good to know. All right, then we'll set a note up for the next Thursday at the same time. Maybe go a little earlier to help people out. Cool, and then. Yes, I think that's correct. And I'm not sure. I don't know if the link that Sarah posted about our YouTube channel, if that is, then that's where it is currently posted. All right, cool. Left questions form. That's good feedback on that too. I know that Peter's on here and he is working with David, and so I'm sure that they can work on that too. All right, cool. I appreciate your time this afternoon, and we will connect again next week. As I said, we'll have the new platform coming out on Monday with some resources on that for you. I'd love to get people's feedback on that, and also put a notation in the newsletter on Monday with a question form for people to put in there. That people who can't come, we can still share stuff with them people as well, and we'll record them all. So thank you all, and take care. We'll talk soon. Take care, everybody.
Hey, John.
Yes, Scott.
Just want to say thank you. I know this is incredibly challenging and difficult for us as business owners, but it's even harder for you being in the position you're in and having to not just navigate the current tsunami, but also navigating the legal obligations that you have and where you fit into this puzzle. So I really want to say thank you to you and your team being available, even though you may not be able to answer everyone's questions, you may not be able to solve everyone's problems. I really appreciate the help, and I really appreciate the lobbying as well.
Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that. Thank you. You'll take care, and we'll talk soon. All right.